friends or associates, relatives, co-workers on page 2.6, or existing tenants. Now, if you're going to do existing tenants, wouldn't you want them to be the good tenants? You wouldn't want to use tenants that aren't paying. So, for example, Barb and I just sold, we sold it, but it hasn't closed yet, a property in Calgary. Has an existing good tenant on there. He's always paid. And what we did is we sold the lot because we're subdividing into two lots, right? Tearing down the house, subdividing. Well, he's a good tenant, so now we're looking for a home for him that he can rent to own and move from renting into a rent to own. If that guy wasn't a tenant that was paying on time, would we do that? Of course not. Still, newspaper to follow up with all the ads you're getting, is that right?
Yeah, all the leads that come in.
So, we'll get John to talk a little bit more about this, but just give us an example of what kind of an ad you might be using on the internet.
Actually, I put the very best ad for getting homeowners actually in the book. I was never a big fan of sort of surprising the homeowner when it comes to what I was actually looking to do. So,
But this is for tenants as well.
for tenants, my biggest success was actually showing a picture of a house and putting some information in. Small down payment, the typical one,
right.
Small down payment, Roots credit, that sort of thing. But actually, I generate more leads through the actual internet, not Kijiji or those ads, but just by people searching out rent-to-own houses in Edmonton. They find me just
More and more and more people are buying online. Every Christmas, now you get more and more people buying online because more and more people are comfortable with giving their credit cards online. I mean, when this first came out, everybody went, I'm not giving my credit card online. No way, I'm not giving my number. Now it's just normal practice, isn't it? Okay? So it's becoming more and more comfortable. So I had to change and I had to adopt. And John was really the first person that kind of really opened my eyes to this. But I'm going to tell you something. We're going to get into it in a little bit. When John first started doing it, John, you don't mind me saying this, it wasn't working for him. He was generating a lot of leads, but he wasn't getting a lot of closes. Is that right, John?
terrible closing.
He wasn't getting a lot of closes. And so when I coached John, I remember getting this phone call from John. Ross, this thing's not working too good up here. I mean, I'm getting tons of leads, but I'm not.
Actually, I think it was when you showed up at the
I came to Edmonton and met with John. This was after I'd done the coaching. And we sat down at John's boardroom table. And I said, okay, John, just walk me through exactly what you're doing. Because it's impossible that a man of your talent can't make this work. There's something's going on. And when we walked through what he was doing exactly, we found out what it was, and I'll share with that a little bit later what it was. Okay? All right. And then flyers and postcards. Now, I am not a fan of flyers and postcards. We're going to give you some examples of those later on. No, that's not the right word. It's not that I'm not a fan, it's just something that I don't use a lot. However, there are people that this is something that they do all the time and they make a lot of contacts with it. So don't discard it. Just because Ross isn't doing it a lot doesn't mean it's me on my own computer. Okay, so do you think that you ever come across somebody, or the realtor would come across somebody that doesn't have enough down payment? The answer would be all the time, right? Well, with the realtor, what happens then? There's no deal and there's no commission, right? Well, what if we could help the realtor out so that he would, we could create the down payment for the tenant and the realtor would get paid? Would that be okay? What about the next one? Do you think the realtor ever comes across somebody who's just gone through a bankruptcy or foreclosure? With a realtor, he can't work with these people, right? Because he can't get a loan. Saying? Yes.
Excuse me, for the property hard for sale,
Yeah?
so how do you deal with this kind of, you buy the property charges for your
Maybe.
potential,
Over.
when you do the rental?
Okay. Existing rent-own clients. Oh, yes, Christy.
Is there a question back on the realtor?
Yeah.
When you're working with a realtor these days, they want you to sign a exclusive
Well-
contract with them for a certain period of time. So how would you have a system in place then where you were drawing from multiple different realtor properties? Then never signing that
The
document?
question is that they want you to do it.
Their license, and they provide you this information.
Okay, so here's what. I've worked in Ontario because I have properties here, and I've never once signed anything like that. And have you?
No, we worked with a bunch of different realtors, and we did the first time because we thought the same thing. We thought, oh, we have to. And this guy actually turned out to be really fantastic, and but he never required it again. He said, at the end, he said, we're not going to re-sign that. He said, that's not a problem.
Did you work for a broker?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Keller Williams, he's great. He's in London.
Yeah.
Robert Dell.
Yeah, anyway, that was the only one that we ever signed. We signed it out of, just because we were newbies in it. And then at the end of our 3-month period, we went back to them and said, you know, we'd like to continue working with you, but we're not renewing that contract.
We're working on this system again, where we are going to get back to the point where the deals just walk in the door, one after the other. They just come in the door. I want you to leave here and know how to have properties come in one after the other. You don't even have to go look for them. They just come in. Wouldn't that be cool? And the tenants too. Okay. All right. Mortgage brokers. The same thing that applied for a realtor, you think it applies for the mortgage broker. Hey, if your credit's screwed up, I mean, mortgage broker can't help you. However, since banks a lot more into internal brokering, tenant buyers ready to go. When you've got just one person, this guy is really important to you. But if you've got 10 tenant buyers ready to go, you're going to pick the best one. How do we pick the best one? Who's got the most money, first of all? Who's got the biggest option consideration? The bigger your option consideration, the more I believe in you. You've got to get good at pre-screening procedures. We're going to talk about that. You've got to get good at doing credit checks, and we're going to show you how to do that. I don't want you to do that personally. I want professionals to do that. I want them to do pull their own credit. Previous landlords. Hey, Andrew, did Josh always pay his rent on time?
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. Then I'm going to go to Christine, and I'm going to say, because she was the previous landlord, Christine, did Josh always pay his rent on time? No, that guy never paid his rent on time. Simple math right now, 30% of their gross income. So if they make $15,000 a year, or $50,000 a year, 30% would that be $15,000? Divide that by 12 months, they could afford about $1,250 a month. Right, Kenson? You're a banker. Yes, sir.
Criminal checks. Do you?
Yeah, if you do, well, when they look a little bit shady, I'll do it. It's a judgment call, but you can't do that. You can't say you look shady, so I'm going to do a criminal because. Okay. Next page, 2.9. How can I find out what the price range, the tenant buyer? We're going to do that in the next section together, isn't it? And there's got a big explanation of so what is it on page 3.1. And I think we've already explained that. On page 3.2, it says note. I think this is good. Whenever we use the expression you or your in any discussion, we want you to understand that you is understood to mean your corporations. So when I say you here, I don't ever mean you personally. What's the secret to real estate? Control and own nothing. So when I say you, I do not mean you personally. Owner, right? So Yeah. So you're. I shouldn't have to look after you too much, should I? No. But I am going to come every 3 months. Make sure you're not doing a grow up. Okay. 3 kinds of money. We talked about this: the upfront money, the option consideration, the periodic payments, and the closing money. Now, it says on page 3.5, if the tenant buyer decided not to exercise their option, you now have several choices. You could not exercise your option, Sean. So, Sean, look at this. I rent to own it from you, and then I sub-rent it, and I option it to Sean. And Sean decides not to exercise his option, or sorry, to Josh. And Josh decides not to exercise his option. Josh, you can't have it for this price, but a little bit more. Is it okay? Now I make even more money. And here's the deal. Yes, Kenton?
What if the market value is below your exercise price? Would you look at the numbers and see whether...
We're going to cover that. We're going to cover that. Your brother asked that while you were away. He did that on your behalf, though.
I texted him. I wasn't sure.
Okay. He did. He covered you. All right. So let me explain something to you right now, guys. The worst case scenario in this lease option, this sandwich lease option business, the way you're going to make the least amount of money is if Josh exercises his option to buy. Let me say that again. The way you make the least amount of money in your financing. Let me say that again. I consider an option the ultimate in vendor financing. You know what vendor financing is? When the vendor takes back a mortgage. Okay? In other words, I buy a property from Sean on a vendor take back. I buy the property from Sean, and I give Sean a mortgage on the property that he just sold me. It's called a vendor took back the mortgage. So Sean, you get a mortgage that you took back. Well, this way, Sean doesn't even have to relinquish control of the title. He can give me an option to buy it, and actually what he's doing is he's giving me vendor financing, isn't he? Because I've got control and possession of the property. I get to use it, rent it, work on it, fix it, whatever I want to do, and he's holding all the financing, but he did not give me equitable interest. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about equitable interest over the next day and a half. I didn't give him an option. And all of a sudden, Josh stops making payments to you on an agreement for sale or anything, or just on your mortgage. Well, you know, he will argue in court that he has equitable interest in the property. He's going to argue that for sure. With an option, if he breaks his option, that's it. The way we're writing the option, he no longer has equitable interest. And I'll show you that in detail. Okay. So,
encountered a number of people doing rent homes. I think, would it be the lease purchase?
it could be 9 months to a year. If he knows how to play the game, it can be a long process. I know, John, you do this, and you can, but John has a way of talking to him and saying, hey, get out now. And actually, you know, that works too. But, you know, here you want to counsel on this? Let's say you had somebody who is going into foreclosure. What the banks will do, Kenton, is they'll say, hey, you know, Josh, and Josh, it's not a bad omen here or anything. I'm just using your name, right? Look, look, Josh, just make whatever payment you can make. All right, it'll be good. And that's what the banks will say. Just make whatever payment you can, and you know, we'll days. No, 50. It's 14 days, 15 days, and then another 45 days, I think it is, or 60. I think it's 45, to catch up your payments. And after that, the property can be taken back through power of sale, and the banks become the owner of the property. That's the primary difference. You've already signed the property over to them, pre-signed it, if you stop making payments. Now, is that reality? Is that how fast it goes? No, because the banks don't want your property. So in reality, even if it's that quick, and I'll have to check the timeline, so don't quote me on those timelines, okay? It's a long time since I've done that, but I'll have to look into it. Pre-foreclosure. Pre-foreclosure is a definition of time. If you're in that time period between when they did the statement of claim, which is the first in the Western provinces, is the first document that comes out, and the time of the final order of foreclosure, and they have that caveat, what's it called in between there, the writ of possession, okay? From the final order of closure to the writ of possession, and the writ of possession to the final order of foreclosure, those are the three big timelines. And John is counseling people in these different periods. Well, here's what happens. From the day that there's a statement of claim, they will give you what is known as a reconcile. Because you went and you looked up in foreclosure, and bam, John's website pops up there. First 10 pages of Google is all John. And you phone up John and you say, John, I'm in trouble. John says, well, give me a little bit of details. And he comes over to see you. Does John have to go through the realtor? Even though the realtor has listed it, does he have to go through the realtor? No, he does not. Now, the realtor, he doesn't have to. You didn't hire the realtor, and your name is still on title. Until the final order of foreclosure, your name's on title. You don't have to deal with anybody. You can deal with John directly. So John deals with you directly, and the realtor's over there screaming, hey, 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 I need to get my commission. And John looks at him and goes, no, I ain't paying no commission. You didn't hire him. The bank. So I know John does this, and you can actually go in and make deals with the banker. Kenson, if I came in there and said, I'm going to solve my friend Sean's problem, are you going to sit down and listen to me? Yep. You're darn right you are. Like, you don't want a foreclosure on your record because you're going to get transferred. Seriously. If you get too many foreclosures or power of sales, that banker, he's getting transferred. Either the loans officer or even the manager is getting moved to somewhere else. He could even get fired. So he doesn't want these on his record. Okay? All right. So let's move right along here. It says on page nation. That's the law. So now you work with John. John phones Josh. Or sorry, you work with Josh. Josh phones John and says, hey, bank said maybe you could help me out here. Absolutely. The other one was going. Now, when it gets to where you've got where it starts, the process has started. You've got a statement of claim or you've got the power of sale has started, and you're in that 45-day period. This properties are generally, for most branches, most banks, are turned over to what they call property managers. People that start to look after, they work for the banks. Usually that's all they do. Stuff. And they start looking after the... number one thing that you should do is find your tenant buyers. Could you go ahead and find your houses first? Sure. And sometimes, and eventually, and I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I can pretty sure that John's going to be able to verify this for me, and anybody who's been in this business doing rent-to-owns, we all start out usually more tenants than we have properties. We have more tenants than we have properties. In other words, got lots of Joshes, but I need to find the properties to put Josh in. But if you will do this business and you will have the patience to do it the way I'm going to train you to do it, I can assure you that will turn around for you, and at one point you're going to have more properties than you have qualified tenants. Now, this might not be good if you have to hold them. We're going to make a couple of little changes on them. Hey, you like this little thing in the corner here that we did? Yeah, you can just scan it in on your phone or whatever, and it goes right to our website. I think John came up with that idea. All right, didn't you, John? Was that you or Neil?
Neil wanted to know.
Okay. Existing rent-to-own tenant buyers, family, friends, industry professional, investors. Oh, I love, that's where, big one. Investors. Now, advertising. And have the tenant buyers come to you. Now, the following ads placed in the apartments for rent or the houses for rent or homes for sale section of the internet or community papers can have great results. And John, you're advertising all the time, continually, in the internet, right? Leave me a message. I want to contact you within 24 hours. Why do you think that maximum 48-hour window is so important? Not that they lose interest so much as they go somewhere else. Because this is a very fast market. Very fast. If you, Josh, you don't get any response, you're going to go work with somebody that is servicing you. Okay? And it's a fast market. These renters, these rent-to-own clients, they're waiting. They're not waiting around. I want this information. I want it now. This is a fast market. Okay, so you got to work fast here. I think you have to work 2 to 3 hours a day, 6 days a week to get any momentum out of this thing. 2 to 3 hours. A warm butt, you'll find yourself frozen there if you just try to do the quick in and out. You have to wait long enough for it to defrost, right? What? And now we need to get to the point where we need to have an ensuite? Goodness gracious me. I'm running water in their houses. But that's the point we got to. So a hard house to sell now is the one that doesn't have an ensuite. People want it. Would you agree with that, John?
Not in the marketplace.
They don't need ensuites?
I've had en suites and I've had a harder time getting rid of those than just a regular single family home.
Really? I got a house in Old. But what are you looking for? Because I'm buying and selling property all the time. Tell me what you're looking for. Fair enough? So just advertise your own place. Flyers.
Can you let them know that, oh, that place just went?
Well, that would be a lie. I don't like to lie. I've decided to live in this place. I was going to rent it out. It crossed my mind briefly. But I've changed my mind. So I'm going to live here. Such a nice house. But I get nice houses like this all the time, Linda. Tell me what exactly you're looking for, and then I'm going to show you how to start gathering the information. Fair enough? And then some flyers on page 312. See the tear-off strips at the bottom? Yeah, right. Why rent? And pay someone else more. Where do you put these things that have tear-off strips? Most visited place on the planet is a grocery store, right? Pardon me? Yeah, markets, farmers markets, lobbies, wherever you think tenants might hang out. Break in about 5 minutes. Is that okay with you guys? Mm-hmm. Handling the phone calls. Step number 2. Now, you'll notice we said handling the phone calls. We didn't say handling the emails, handling the website, handling the Facebook, handling the Twitter, or any other myriad of ways to communicate. That's the way you gather the information, but that's not the way you handle it. Now, John is gathering information on his, even the tenants right. We're going to show you and get them to answer a lot of stuff, and it's sort of almost like a pre-screening, isn't it, John? But it doesn't end there, because you see, what they told you is a bunch of lies. A lot of times, not always. Some people are truthful, but a lot of people are lying. They are trying to figure out what they want you to hear. They're trying to figure out what you want them to hear. I mean, they're trying to outthink you at this point. They're trying to put down, well, geez, I got 10,000, but I don't want to put down 10,000. 314, about 5 or 6 lines down, it says, when it comes to communication with the tenant, listening to what the prospective tenant buyer says and how he says it, his tonality is extremely important. Sometimes it's what the tenant buyer does not say that's most important. In other words, you got to read between the lines. All right? Don't misunderstand us. We're not suggesting that you don't have a way for your prospective tenant buyer to communicate you with using text, email, or the like. What we are saying that the initial pre-qualifying communication from you should be done a verbal one. Now, when we come back from break, I'm going to show you how to do that. Fair enough? Using the tenant buyer initial call script on page 316. And then we'll go through that. And lucky for you, I wrote notes on page 317, 318, 319, 320, and 321